Okay, so in this video we're gonna pretty much just be doing one thing. What we're gonna do is we're going to take this enemy, add it to the world, add all the properties that we're gonna need for an enemy into the game object, and that's pretty much it. We're gonna animate him, and we're gonna go from there. Um, so. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's going to be, roughly a 20-minute video. And it's going to start to add, another layer to what we have, and it's going to make it feel a lot more complete. So I hope you're excited about this. And so let's just go ahead and get straight to it. Okay, so like I said, we're going to need to add a lot to our game object. Right now, this is just a generic one size fits all kind of object. It's going to cover everything, okay? And so the first thing we need in our game object is a flag that says that this is an enemy. So we're just going to say this dot is enemy is equal to false, okay? And then we're going to need an enemy type. This dot enemy type is equal to 0. So we're going to add some code that are some properties that we're going to need for pathfinding, but we're not going to implement pathfinding for quite a few videos left, because we want to test with the enemy collision and everything without the enemy moving around. Okay, so we're going to put these properties in, but we're not going to use them for a while. Okay, so this dot next x is equal to 0. This dot next y is equal to 0. And we want to know if he is attacking. And we want to know what his health is. One thing we need to know is the direction that the enemy is facing. So when we do add pathing, we're going to need an array of points that are going to be like the shortest path to whatever random coordinate that enemy chose. And so here we're just going to say enemy path is equal to and then this dot counter, we're going to be animating this enemy, so we need a counter and a frame. Then we need a property called bounce. Okay, so this dot needs bounce. We're going to set it equal to false. Only when Link hits it should it bounce away from Link, okay, or move away from Link. And so we'll be implementing that in a future video as well, not in this one. So this dot bounce x is equal to 0, and this dot bounce y is equal to 0. Okay, and so we want to draw this enemy, but first we need to place an enemy. So we're going to be using a lot of these properties with our enemy. And so where are we going to be placing an enemy at? Well, with whatever map that enemy goes to. And so we're going to place it right here into our starter map. Okay, and so we're just going to take this game object, and we got to be careful with this because I like to copy and paste things and then not correct what I was initially going to correct. So one thing that we've already defined this game object, so we don't want to define that again. And we also, so we're going to go ahead and take that let away. We also don't want to define this objects 7.7 again, so we're going to take that away. We don't need a new link, X, Y, new map, all that stuff. Don't need that. No is portal, but we could just say is enemy. Okay, so that's good. And so here we're just going to say 160 and 184. All right, just a random. And so we don't really need next X and next Y because we're not doing pathing yet. But we do need its correct dimensions, and so most enemies are going to be a 16 by 16. There are exceptions. Here we're going to need an enemy type. And just the first enemy that we're going to create. And geo.direction. Now, we already set it to up, so I'm just not going to define that here. But it depends on the enemy. I think it's not quite random, because if you go through the map, they always start in the same way. You know, if you wanted to get, you know, as far as accuracy to the original Zelda, you would just have to look at which direction they're facing and place them exactly where they are and stuff like that. We are not really going for that type of precision within this. Okay, and so we push that object, and now we have this enemy. Okay, so what do we do now? Well, we want to draw that enemy, and so that is going to be in draw game objects. Okay, so go down to your draw game objects, and it doesn't really matter where we place this. I think we're just going to place it at the end. Okay, so right after old woman. Okay, so we're just going to say copy this. If game object is enemy, and if it is, what do we want to do? Well, we want to do quite a few things. We want to figure out what enemy it is, and this is a good case for like a switch statement, because we're going to have lots of different enemies. But right now we're just going to set it up as an if statement. So if game objects at I dot enemy type is equal to 1, well, we're going to do that here. Okay, and so the first thing we want to do is we want to set up that counter. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and say counter plus plus. Done. And then we want to actually do something useful with that counter. So we're going to say if it's greater than 10, greater than or equal to 10, oops, then we want to start changing up our frames. So game objects at I dot frame plus plus, and game objects at I dot counter, we're going to set back to 0. And then, you know, this enemy only has 2 frames. So let's look at that enemy real quick. So it's right here. I'm just going to open it up in GIMP. Excuse me. And so we have this enemy right here. And so there are only 2 frames with him. Excuse me. And so this is going to be frame 0 and frame 1. If we go above frame 1, then we don't have an enemy to draw. Okay, so if it goes above frame 1, we want to reset it back to frame 0. So that's what we're going to do there. So we have if the counter, and then inside here we're just going to say if okay, so set it back to 0. And now what we want to do is we want to draw that in all directions. And so if we look at it, there are 8 different sprites and 2 go for each direction. So we're just going to be setting up our direction statements here. So if I.direction is equal to down. And once we set this if statement up, then we'll just copy and paste it all the way down. So if frame is equal to 0, then we're just going to draw that game object. So that's going to be ctx.draw draw image, and we're going to draw it from enemies. And that one's located at 0, 0. It has a width and height of 16, and we're going to be drawing it at gameObjectsI.x, gameObjectsI.y, and it is still going to have that same 16 by 16 dimensions. Okay, and so what we want to do here is we want to copy that, paste it here. If the frame is equal to 1, basically do the same thing, but we're just going to drop this down to 30. Okay, and so this one looks perfect. And so we're just going to do that again. We're just going to say if. We can change this to an else if. It doesn't really matter in this way, in this instance, because the direction is not going to change between any of these. But whatever. So this one, we're just going to say up. And the only things that change here is going to be this number right here. So 0 becomes 60. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this again. And in the next one, this is going to be left. This is going to be 30. So these two numbers change to 30. So we have 0, 0, 60, 60, 30, 30. And then we have an else statement. And in the else statement, it changes to 90. So I'm just going to get rid of all of this right here. And here we're going to say 90 and 90. All right. And so that pretty much does it for this. So let's just go ahead and make sure that that ran. Looks like we might be getting an error. Quite a few, but it's the same error probably. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so it says enemies is not defined, and so we just forgot to, bring in that sprite sheet, and so that's a pretty easy fix. And so let's go ahead and bring in that sprite sheet. And so just right after pause screen, we're just going to say let enemies equal a new image. And we're going to say enemies.src is equal to, and then we're going to say enemies.png. Okay? And so now we can go ahead and test that. And look at that. We have our enemy. If we change the direction, it's very likely that there won't be any errors there, and he'll just be able to change to whatever. We'll do it once. Okay? We'll go ahead and set his, in fact, we can just set it right here. So we'll set him to left and now he is facing left. Okay, so that works perfectly. So in our next video, we're going to add Link's sword attack. And then after that, we're going to start adding some collision and many other things. So hopefully you're excited about that. If you are, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.